Why? Oh, I wanted to like it. Nay, I wanted to love this. I was hype going in. I was like, you brought us X. Pearl was the thing that happened, but come on, bring us home with Maxxxine. Like,
we were on the verge of greatness. We were this close.
You're a fucking movie star.
And today we have Maxxxine. The world's gonna know her name. That isn't like the tagline or anything. It's just that's what it was in the trailer. It was like boo, 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 Maxxxine, and then somewhere in there on the posters and trailers, it was like the world's gonna know her name. Like, here she comes. Hello, welcome. I'm MovieMan. We're doing a movie review today. I don't know why I did it like that. I'm in a silly, goofy mood right now, I guess. I don't know. Maxxxine, as the critics are calling, is the third and final installment in the, what do you call it? The X trilogy? The Maxxxine trilogy? This is a rare treat. I will have reviewed an entire trilogy, each individually as they came out in theaters. I reviewed X back in the day. I called it good old Grindhouse. I loved X, thought it was great. Pearl was a prequel film to X about the gangly old crone that lived in the farmhouse they were shooting the porno at from X, and I reviewed Pearl. And it's good in its own right, like in a vacuum, but when compared to X, it lacked the punch, and personally, as much as I love Mia Goth, I didn't love Pearl that much. But then they announced this was happening, because at the end of X, she goes off to become like, she's, final girl, lone survivor. She's gonna go become a star one way or another. And so I remember when this was announced. From the announcement, I was excited. A24, 80s, it's gonna be Hollywood slasher vibe with our main character, and we're gonna end her story. And if you don't know, it's directed by a Ty West. Pretty rare you see this nowadays, because typically people like to throw directors around in different trilogies now, but he directed X, directed Pearl, and now is back for Maxxxine. In terms of previous filmography before this, I touched on a little bit in both X and Pearl. He mostly leans towards horror, such other examples as The Innkeepers, and then he also did The House of the Devil. Overall, for the most part, I would say he does horror fairly, if not really well. And then cast, oh my god, there are too many people. I swear to god, the trailer, the way at the very end, it's just like do. Here's all the people that are in this movie. Like, undoubtedly our main character is Mia Goth. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the last film that she was in that I covered on this channel was Infinity Pool, but I could be mistaken. She's becoming more and more of a known quantity, due in part especially to A24, and just kind of like horror films, honestly, like indie horror to the horror genre in general. I love her. I think that in interviews, she is the sweetest human being.
Hi, I'm Mia Goth, and I'm here with BuzzFeed answering your questions whilst I play with puppies.
In movies, she's a certifiable scream queen.
I think I am good at screaming. I can scream for you.
Let me hear you.
And a excellent actor.
I say actor, not actress, because the word actress is nonsensical.
And then everybody else, look at a poster, look at the credits. There's just so many people. None of them I would really consider, maybe Kevin Bacon. Most of them I wouldn't consider like, super important, super duper main characters. We will start with the pros first, as I am wont to do, because I feel like based on the title of this video and my final rating, I'm gonna have some people mad at me. It's a fun movie. It's a great homage to like 80s cinema, 80s horror, slasher films. I'd be remiss if I didn't say like the editing style harkens back to that. It's fun. It's not like frenetic. That whole like Hollywood sleazy just Halsey being like, so did every dead girl in Hollywood.
So said every dead girl in Hollywood.
Yeah, the vibe is there. The lighting, like the cinematography, the makeup, the outfits. The vibe is on point for the movie in terms of capturing that. It's literally 1985. Next up, each cast member individually, a key word there, each cast member certainly brings all that they can, all all that they are physically able to do, they bring to their respective characters. I think the most fleshed out one, Mia Goth is top of that pile for sure. Additional characters, even if they only have one scene or some like few lines of dialogue, I mean they do it very well. They bring what they can to the table with what little they are given. Practical effects, when applied, it looks solid. Bloody, it's occasionally gory. Again, just 80s slasher vibes for sure. It's done practically, as far as I can tell, throughout most of the movie. I just put Mia Goth with a little heart next to her name. I love Mia Goth a lot. She's never, in my opinion, turned in a dull, bad, or anything other than stellar performance. Say what you want, people didn't love Infinity Pool, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah! Jamesy! Come on!
I always enjoy seeing her in whatever she's in. But now we get to the cons of the matter. I will try to put this best into words as I can. I suppose if you try hard enough, you can poke some holes in my arguments, so feel free to do so. I try to go in with an open mind to every movie that I see, but I will admit that there's a lot of hype around this film. A lot of preliminary reviews are pretty positive. I think IGN didn't love it, and Rotten Tomatoes, the cumulative score, I think it's barely certified fresh. Your day-to-day Tom, Dick, Jane, and Sally's, a lot of people were like, oh my god, we love this. So I will admit, going in, I wanted to like it. I wanted to love it, honestly. And I was starting to catch like that hype fever, right? I don't know, by the end of it, I was a little bit... It's not a bad movie, but I was just disappointed. I think it's better than Pearl, but not as good as X. I would definitely say like my personal ranking, which this might be a hot take because so many people love Pearl. X, Maxxxine, Pearl, I think is my personal rankings. I think too much focus is taken off of Maxxxine, and I can clarify that in a minute. I just think for a film that's supposed to be about Maxxxine and her as a powerful female character, scream queen, final girl, horror heroine. My favorite scene in the movie comes fairly early on, involving an alleyway and her and another fella. I'll leave it at that. I thought that was setting the vibe. It was setting the precedent for the film, and yet like, no, it gets kind of like tame, honestly. It's violent sometimes, sure, and rough in its treatment of women frequently, but it was like kind of tame compared to what I was used to from this director and what I was expecting. The cast is way too large. Like, don't get me wrong, all these actors individually I love. You know, Giancarlo Esposito, I love Halsey and her work. It's cool to see her show up in a movie out of nowhere. From the detectives to her friends to her industry friends, like I like all the actors individually on their own merits, but these people barely had any time to breathe and move in this film. Cut it in half, we'd be talking a different ball game altogether, and that pulls our attention as well as Maxxine's attention all over the map. We're following her, I admit that. It's her trying to get an audition and then make it big in Hollywood. That's all sidetracked with this whole Night Stalker thing and this murder on the loose, and then she's like trying to figure that out. This detective is like on her ass, and there's so many things pulling her in different directions. I'm like, wait a second. So I know the trailer is like she wants to get big in Hollywood, but part of her past is haunting her. Cool. Then we still cut back to her like in Hollywood, and then the bit with the detective, and then this other subplot with who the actual killer is. I wanted more empowerment from Maxxxine. I wanted more agency, and I feel like they give her that agency and empowerment at the beginning on her own accord. And I love how that, like I said, it's the alley scene, and I love how that scene is set up. And even the scene, the very first scene, when she has her like monologue and she's doing the audition, cool, establish her as the strong, independent character that she is. But then so much of this movie is her like just kind of getting lucky. She gets into sticky situations and then reaches out for help from other people. It's good to have a support system, don't get me wrong, but so much of this film is other people helping her, and for her to get like Deus Ex Machina out of situations by the time that like comeuppance needs to happen for our antagonist, it's basically served out to our protagonist on a silver platter. Is it earned? Like, is it really earned? Fans of Maxxxine, do you think so? I don't know. I like it when you're gonna give me a badass, especially a formidable horror heroine, a female horror character. Like, make her a badass, make her be the one that like your nexts her way through this situation and just comes out victorious on the top. But I didn't get that. I felt it dropped off. Not to mention the plot, kind of predictable. I didn't know where X was going at any point in time, and Pearl hardly counts because it's a prequel. We kind of know ultimately where Pearl ended up or was going to end up as a character. There were some small surprises of varying degrees of horror throughout, sure. Maxxxine, I figured out who the killer was, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn here. I didn't figure out Glass Onion. In Kevin Bacon's first scene in this film, by the end of that scene, I figured out who the killer was. And that was like within the film's first 20-30 minutes or so. So I mean, I think the film is fairly predictable in how it panned out. Trailers hinting at certain character deaths just based on situation and where they were and what, like just something they were holding or like twirling a knife or whatever. The film just kind of lacked subtlety. There was foreshadowing, and that was fine. Even after there was foreshadowing, the movie would hammer home the foreshadowing later on. Honestly, Kevin Bacon's character, perfect like sleazy slime ball, like old 80s detective who was just like, Maxxxine, past ain't done with you yet, little missy. Not super dynamic, but just an engaging villainous presence. I would have rather have him been the character who becomes the primary antagonist instead of just what he ended up being, which more of just a minor impediment as opposed to a brick wall. Other complaint, not enough kills. Bro, not what? Like, aside from cadavers we find in this film, how many people die on screen? So there are 4 like big deaths that I can recall. I might be forgetting somebody. In addition to some other supplementary deaths and people that die off screen. Well, I take it back. One wasn't even a kill. It was just a brutal mutilation. But again, it was my favorite part of the movie. There was violence, but certainly not as much as I was expecting, and nowhere near the amount of gore I thought there would be. Perhaps I am spoiled. Perhaps I am desensitized at this point to horror cinema, but I was expecting way more violence, brutality. Not that a film has to have those things to be good, but for the vibe they were projecting, I just assumed it would be there, and it wasn't. Not to mention, almost every kill that happens in this movie is off screen. One like is happening, but it keeps like cutting away while it's happening. Another, straight up, like I thought it was gonna be badass because there's a kill that involves this junkyard like car compactor, right? When the thing comes down and then all of that happens, I thought it was gonna show somebody being like brutally smushed and compacted. No, we just cut to outside of the car, hear a quick scream, and then blood comes like pouring out the door. Like, come on, perfect opportunity. You had a brutal mutilation in the first 30 minutes, but you couldn't show me somebody being crushed by a car compactor. You couldn't show me somebody being stabbed all the way through to death. I mean, you kind of did, but not really. All these people being killed by this leather-clad killer, and you're gonna just have all these reveals of cadavers afterwards and body parts and just no creative kills. Even Pearl and X had creative kills. What's going on? I could stand here all day and complain, but I'm making it out to be worse than it actually was. Like, in a vacuum, it's fine as a movie. Like, it's good, sure. As part of the X trilogy, sure, it's still fine, it's still good. But it's definitely like a weak conclusion in my opinion. There's aspects of this film that I like a lot. I love me a goth, I love horror, I like that 80s slasher, LA vibe, you know, got the PI after you, mysterious masked killer, slasher kills, creative concepts, gore, the whole shebang like that. Most importantly though, for a movie about Maxxxine, I wanted more for her, for our girl here. We get a conclusion to her story, right? But I don't know, is it earned necessarily? And even so, like on the journey, I would have loved to have seen more scenes of solo empowerment and agency, but I feel like she is merely, as we the audience are just kind of at the mercy of the narrative and the story, so is Maxxxine, as she is thrust from situation to situation where she lucks out, barely makes it out, you know, a little bit of smarts, a little bit of gumption, and a whole lot of help from other people. So all that being said, it's good. It's worth your time. I mean, sure, watching in theaters. Maxxxine, I would give like a high 3 out of 5 to. A high 3 out of 5. I forget what I gave X. I think I gave X like might have been a high 4 or something. I looked back and I saw I gave Pearl a low 3 out of 5. So it makes sense I would give Maxxxine a high 3 out of 5. It is above average. As far as films go, an A24 joint, part of this trilogy, I always say this a lot, could have been significantly worse. I think it could have been significantly better. I'm surprised and disappointed that it wasn't what I was I don't know, what I was hoping for, what I was expecting. Tell me why I'm wrong in the comments. Let's argue about it, I guess. I wanted to love it, but I couldn't get there. That's all I gotta say about Maxxxine. So, thank you guys so much for watching, and stay tuned for the next movie review that I do. And goodbye, travelers.